Welcome to the podcast. Súbele volumen. Conversation with the people who were with me. In the world TV. Carlos tonight. Historias de un reportero. Carlos tonight. Dale que viene lo bueno.
Everyone, welcome to Carlos Tonight. Thank you so much for listening on your favorite podcast platform, and of course for watching wherever you're watching this from. You know, I was talking to someone this week about my recent visit to San Diego Comic-Con. I had a very awesome time. It was my 7th convention. I missed last year because I believe they held it on Thanksgiving weekend, and we all know that I go home to Miami during Thanksgiving. But had a good time. My cosplay had a glitch with that, but I'll make up for it because Halloween is just around the corner. So since Comic-Con, we've had She-Hulk, we've had Deadpool teaser, we've had D23 was held, The Munsters came out, and we have 2 Black Panther trailers right now. And I was just introduced to Dark Specter. And joining me to talk about this fascinating character is the man behind it all, Bruce Nachsin. Hey, how's it going?
Hello, Carlo. Thank you for having me on. Not that you had much of a choice. Hello, everybody. Tonight I'm Carlos. Wait a minute. No, tonight I'm on Carlos Tonight.
Yes, that's right. So how are you? That's my first question.
And my first answer will be, I am fine. And my first question to you is, how are you?
I'm well. Getting ready for the Halloween season. I love the fall, and I love when it gets cold because we had a very brutal summer, I believe. How about you?
Well, I live on the West Coast, so the summer was melting, and I love Halloween in my area. There's this one particular house in this area where the owner opens up the garage and they have like 3 drum sets and they have like a DJ and various musicians, and they just invite people to come get candy and beat on those drums. And I've got relatives flying in just because of that house.
Really?
I can't wait. Oh yeah, it's great.
Have you played the drums there? Be honest.
No. Oh, I've played the drums there. Do I play the drums? No, I don't. Okay. Does that stop me? No, it doesn't.
I hope not. Cool. Well, let's talk about this character, Dark Specter. Who is he?
The Dark Specter is someone who came from a, not, shall we say, happy childhood, not because of his family, but because of being, somebody who was picked on, bullied. He was in the out crowd. And because of that, he develops a thirst for power, and he seeks it out, and he finds it. But by the time he does this and comes back home with his plans to become the powerful villain, to get his revenge on society, as we all want to do, as you want to do right now, you do, he's faced with a problem. Somebody who's very precious to him, somebody who means the world to him, his mother, is now ailing, and he must balance his desires with his need to take care of her, as all good sons should do.
I was watching that clip that you sent over, and that's what I was thinking about, this relationship between him and the mom. And then I thought about my relationship with my mom, and we have a pretty close one. We talk every day. Was that based on maybe your personal life too, or no?
To some degree. I am, without hanging from the apron strings, I am a mama's boy. See, when I was about, you're clearly a mama's boy. It's okay. And you've admitted that. So it's okay. But the reality is, around the time I was 8 years old, my father passed away. And because of that, my mother, who had very little in the way of support, we had some relatives who would occasionally pitch in some money, but basically she was stuck working 3 jobs trying to take care of 2 children. And we both had different issues. And it wasn't an easy thing for her. As the years progressed, I grew to appreciate that. And then when I finally left home and moved out to LA, it was important for me to keep in contact with her and to, in my teens into my early 20s, I was fairly selfish towards my mother, just as my brother was, because she effectively accidentally raised us to be that way. But a neighbor at one point intervened with me and pointed this out to me and made me feel terrible and guilty as I needed to. And after that, I just wanted to keep close contact with my mother. And so I was 4 or 5 times a week, whether I had anything to talk about or not. Flew back home every couple months to visit. And while I wasn't necessary to pay tribute to her, you might notice there's a certain characteristic to the mother that is, shall we say, East Coast Jewish mother. Mm-hmm. And that is my mother. And played wonderfully by my TV mom, Judy Nasmitz.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, she did a good job in it.
She's an amazing person and a wonderful singer. And great improvisationalist. My ability to speak clearly top of the pile.
I've had those days.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned that Dark Specter, he dealt with a lot of bullying, as most kids do. I know I did when I was in elementary school. How about you? Were you bullied, and did this influence the creation of this character?
Let's see. I was a fat asthmatic with a lot of allergies. So clearly I was the popular kid. Everybody loved me. Now, I come from Philadelphia, where violence is sort of a way of showing love. There's a reason our football stadium has a prison, judge, and its own police force, which as a Philadelphian, I'm both ashamed and very proud of. But I was very bullied up to the point I was 11, 12 years old. At this point, I was also very heavy, like 280 pounds at 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And one day, what stopped the bullying, because I was pacifistic, I was not into sports, I was an easy target, is I decided that win or lose, I'd fight every kid in the neighborhood. And I went to every kid I knew, everyone who picked on me, even the ones who didn't, and I fought all of them. And that stopped the bullying. But of course, we're very much shaped by those early experiences more than our adult experiences, even though they do shape us. So no matter how old I get, no matter how many experiences I have, no matter how much confidence I've built, in the back of the head, not the headphones, but the head itself, mm-hmm. driving the machinery that is me is this bullied 280-pound 11-year-old. So it's very formative. So I identify with, I don't want to say misfit characters, but misfit characters, the underdog. It's within my wheelhouse because I spent a lot of time just spinning in circles in that wheelhouse.
Yeah. That was a hell of a fight scene that was going on. I really liked it.
Put a lot of work into that. Put a lot of time, effort, and work. We had a professional stunt coordinator, Henry Layton, and even though he wasn't there on shoot day because he does work for the NFL and he had someplace he needed to be, his protege, Kashiva Betts, was there to put us through our paces to make sure that we were safe. That shoot day took about 13 hours, and it was me and Mark under the hot sun, just having it out.
In your outfits.
in our outfits,
yeah.
That were not conducive to reflecting the light.
I was like sitting there watching and thinking, how did this all come together? Like, can you describe from the piece of paper to what we saw on the screen?
So Dark Specter 2 wasn't actually going to be a thing. It's called Dark Specter 2 because there is a Dark Specter 1. And while I'm proud of it, it's not what the Dark Specter 2 is, and it is not what I have in mind for more if more becomes possible. So Dark Specter 1 was a sketch comedy because I was in a group with Judy called Fred Willard's Mohos. And it was the beloved comedian, actor Fred Willard. He had a sketch comedy team of his friends. And I got invited into this group. I don't know how. Well, I mean, I do know how, but it doesn't matter. And we'd gather every Monday with a bunch of sketches and put them up, and then he'd put up shows. So I wrote this sketch about a villain and a hero having this argument, mostly using metaphors of gardening. And then at one point, this old woman comes in. Well, not old Judy. I know you're not that old. This woman comes in, and it turns out to be the mother of the villain. And she breaks up the fight, and she thinks it's a date, and it just kind of ruins the entire thing for everybody. But that's it. It's just a sketch, like you'd see on Saturday Night Live. So you should see it. It's called Dark Specter, not to be confused with the Power Ranger Dark Specter. One of the people I made this film with at one point told me, hey, I'm going to have all this filming equipment. We should do something else. So I wrote what I thought erroneously, moronically, would be a silly, quick little thing to be, which was Dark Specter II. We'd have this fight. We'd then have this scene with the mother. And back with the original Dark Specter 1, what had happened is the director of that short said to me, if these people weren't sketch comedy characters, why would they be there? Why would the mother be there? And that led my thought process. Well, if she was there and it wasn't that she drove him there because he's a loser, because that's the sketch comedy reason why something would happen, why would she be there? Why would she need to be there? And it occurred to me, well, if she needed to be there, she couldn't be anywhere else. Something's wrong. Oh my God, she has early onset Alzheimer's. She's there because he has to keep an eye on her, even when doing his nefarious deeds. That would limit them. That would sort of constrict him. He would have issues. That led to the writing of Dark Specter 2. But then I wrote this thing, and the equipment went away, and I had this thing. And I had several friends who wanted to help me out because they really liked Dark Specter and they believed in it. So we came up with the idea of doing a Dark Specter 2. So we threw a Kickstarter to get some money. We're looking for $5,000. We just made the $5,000, which doesn't help when you have already promised about 1,500 of that in various prizes and goodies. Mm-hmm. So it's their take, and then it's that 1,500 gone away. So ultimately we had $3,000, and we scheduled the shoot. I was in an acting class at a place called the Beverly Hills Playhouse. One of the people I had known was Mark. And what I liked about Mark is he was a leading man, but he was also a nerd and goofy. Like, Mark he's more of a craftsman artist. Like, you ever see those like river tables where it's driftwood and then there's like a center thing with things in it, so it looks like this like riverside scene of flowing tributary? Mm-hmm. He does that for fun. He bought himself like a broken down 1940s truck, and that's his drive around the city vehicle that he totally restored himself. Wow. But he's also a talented actor, and he's a good, responsible dude. So it's like, okay, I've got myself somebody to play the hero. And then it grew from there. Because when you see shorts like that, either it's people who have resources, which we didn't really have, or it's sort of other production companies just running tests and doing things. People have money or budgets and they find things. We didn't have any of that. But I wanted to... So when you see independent people do shorts like that, they tend to be very low quality. Or the fights aren't very good, or the VFX are cheesy or non-existent, or everything's hinted at. I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be like... And maybe not, I might not have gotten there, but I wanted it to be as if like a couple minutes of a Marvel movie fell off and landed in an independent film. That began costing us a lot of money. So I found a location. We shot all day in Riverside County in front of their city council building, the CAC building. We had a permit to be there. It was closed because it's not open on a Sunday. So that was an entire day, and that was like getting an entire infrastructure out there. Then, of course, Judy wanted to do it, so we had to find a house. And there was probably a crew of about 30 people. And on fight day, there was about 20 extras. So it was a pretty big ordeal. Wow. Self-financed between me and the director. And then after we shot it, which was the easy part, then came post-production. And that ended up costing us, after being ripped off a few times by various VFX houses for one form or another, And I could tell that story if you're interested, though I don't know how interesting it necessarily is. But it does involve actual fraud. The director got frustrated and eventually pulled about $25,000 out of his own savings to pay for special effects, which is why the fight scene looks like it does. So,
yeah, that fight scene is amazing. So congratulations with that.
Why, thank you. I'm very proud of my team.
So the character, it seems when I was watching it, it kind of reminded me of like Jekyll and Hyde, because he's like this, a very angry person during the fight, but at home he seems like a really, really nice guy. He wants to take care of his mom, and you could almost feel like when the flames come out when he's on the phone, like his anger is like building up and he can't control it, but he tries to.
I never thought of it as a Jekyll and Hyde thing because my view of what I wanted for the Dark Specter is a lot of times when you have characters who have some positive qualities, they're also anti-heroes. They're not villains. So I wanted him to be a villain who has good moments, who has aspects of himself as a nice person, or certainly a loyal son. So there's a little bit of self-interest there. It is his mom. Dr. Doom did go to hell and enlist Stephen Strange to rescue his mother from the Fistu. No one would really accuse Dr. Doom of being a good guy, but he did this thing for his mother. Mm-hmm. There's some of my geek cred. So it's very possible for it not to be Jekyll and Hyde, but it is him. This is my mother. Mm-hmm. And I have written where I wanted to take it is a series. So I have a pilot, I have a Bible, I have seasons outlined, and I also did write a Dark Specter 3, which really gets, because the concept was evolving as this was happening. Mm-hmm. So like when we shot Dark Specter 2, it was writing Dark Specter 2 that I really discovered another aspect of his mother that isn't necessarily apparent, but his mother used to be a supervillain. Mm. And he's not supposed to know that. She had given up the life on a choice of come with me or go to jail with who was his father, who was a former FBI agent. Mm. Like, again, this isn't in the story Dark Specter 2, but right. These are like things that occur. And she was a science-based villain, which is why, like her early onset Alzheimer's, she was affected by her technology. It also makes her highly dangerous, which is why he doesn't just need to protect her because she might hurt herself. She might cook up a nuclear bomb just called she was bored.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so he might want to take over the world, but he can't have her run amok because it's uncontrollable. And she doesn't know the difference between knitting you a pair of socks where it self-regulates your body temperature and creating C4 on the kitchen stove. To her, it's just the project she's doing today.
So I was looking at your reel, and you seem like a very versatile actor. Tell me, when did you get the bug, the acting bug?
You would have thought that I'd have it early on, but I was a cripplingly shy kid. Mm-hmm. And what had happened is I wanted to be a musician originally. I had a band, and that band fell apart. Mm-hmm. And I'm a very creative person. And without the band and the music, which was my identity up to that point, I didn't really have an outlet. So at some point, somebody suggested, why don't you go to community college, take a couple classes? And I was going to go for fine woodworking, but I was allergic to some of the wood dust. So that meant I had to transfer. And again, incredibly shy person. So I decided, you know what? Why don't I transfer into the communications track? Why don't I take some acting classes? Maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to talk to people again. Maybe I'll learn how to talk to a girl. So I started taking acting classes, and I was terrible. I was not naturally talented, no ability for this whatsoever. I was terrible. I did enjoy it, though. So I kept taking acting classes and eventually moved my way into local community theater. And it was there doing plays where I began to have a lot of fun with the acting and develop an ability. It also did get me over my shyness because I was in one of the first plays I was in. I was cast as the lead, which was great, of something called Zeus Story, where it's this one guy laying out his horrible, embarrassing life and the pain it's caused him on this one poor guy who just wants to sit on a park bench and be by himself. Well, I delivered that to 300 people over 2 weekends, Saturday, Sunday, plus one Sunday, a matinee and a show. And I delivered that to that big audience. And after that, it just sort of broke the shyness. And I could now just go up and talk to people. Eventually, I ended up in a play with this lady who, we'll call her Annie. And Annie was this beautiful, talented actress and one of the smartest people I'd ever met. She had created a website that was like a resource for the literature of the Renaissance, the Romantic period, just everything from like the 1500 on to like the early 1900s. And she just made this website by herself. She had wanted to be an actress so bad. She lived out in Los Angeles, where I live now. And while she was out here, she did nothing. She never tried. She made no effort. She was afraid if she did, she might fail. So by default, she failed. So in Philly, nothing much was happening. There was only so far you could go in the acting world of Philadelphia, especially once you got into the union, because there was only so much union work. Yeah. And it became a question of, well, what am I trying to do with my life? Well, I'm good at technology. I don't like it, but I'm really good at it. So my life can be computers for the rest of my life, or I could try something else. And I wanted to do something that was challenging, and I have no chance in the world of succeeding at this, so let's go. And so I moved out to Los Angeles.
I bet you it was a pretty scary move.
It was. I hadn't moved anywhere before.
Yeah.
And it happened just post 9/11. Mm-hmm. So the entire country was in upheaval, so it was not a great time to be doing stuff like that.
Right.
But if you never leave home, if you never leave the areas you live in, you don't grow, you don't expand. Because one of the things about, or certainly where I lived, one of the things I loved about Los Angeles is, I mean, I was a fairly liberal, open-minded person back in Philadelphia, certainly for being in Northeast Philadelphia. But when I moved out to Los Angeles, everything, every culture, every type of person, every walk of life you'd like to meet or encounter is out in Los Angeles. Every piece of culture you may never have been experienced or been exposed to, it's out in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. It's mind expanding to do that. So it opened up my world quite a bit. And I love it. So while it was certainly scary because it's an expensive city, until you find your people, it's an unforgiving city. It's a very transient city. So a lot of the people you do meet are here because they want something and don't know how to get it. And oftentimes tend to evaluate you as how much of a meal could you make?
Yeah.
But over time, if you can survive the first couple months, you start finding your people. And then once you do, and you become an actual resident, it becomes a very wonderful place to live. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else at this point.
Oh, that's great. I used to live down the road in San Diego.
Where do you live now?
I live in Dallas, Texas.
Oh.
A lot different.
I would think so.
Yeah. So back to your character. What's your hope? You kind of mentioned a little bit, but what's your hope for Dark Specter, and what can we learn from him?
So what Dark Specter... So latter question first. What we can learn from Dark Specter. Dark Specter is a study on having desires and goals in your life that you're having difficulty attaining, and also having barriers in the way of. I think a lot of people since I am a latter Gen Xer, like just, I think a lot of people in my generation can relate and have this feeling. But a lot of times the things you want in the world, there are barriers to getting them. And a lot of times The first barrier is just not knowing how to start and making those steps. Well, imagine having that challenge while being an incredibly powerful individual with a chip on his shoulder. So some lessons can be taken is the right and wrong way to cope with adversities in life, the value of family, that responsibility still falls on the shoulder of people who don't necessarily want it or are capable of dealing with it. And also, sometimes you still need to find your humanity even when you're blinded by anger. Those are some of the concepts. So having just opined that and what I was hoping to do with it is I wanted to grow it into a series. Mm-hmm. And that got a bit derailed by the pandemic because even though I've been out here in a solid way since about 2004, because there was some back and forth just trying to get my footing out here. I'm not that well connected. I am still a bit of an outsider. Everything I do is me trying to force my way in and prove my talent, prove my abilities, which is why if you've watched any of my other stuff, like Lunchtime is Over, and if you like fight scenes and martial arts, watch Lunchtime is Over. I shoot for a higher quality than I am actually financially or by experience qualified to produce. And I insist on it and I work towards that. So with Dark Specter, I wanted to make it a series. So we got a series Bible, we got concept artwork, we have a pilot. I did write a Dark Specter 3 at a prompting of somebody, but I don't have $250,000 to do it justice. There's just no way of doing it in a quality way, but I wanted to incorporate it into the series if possible. As we were getting a little bit of momentum, the pandemic hit. And that's derailed. And I'm not sure, in now a very oversaturated superhero market full of projects that have a lineage behind them, how to pick up the pieces. I'm hoping to figure that out, but I would like to do a series. And beyond a series, I also conceived several spin-offs on it based off of a character who doesn't appear in the shorts or indeed even in the original pilot. But there's a character who recruits the Dark Specter at one point called the Emissary. And I created a spin-off series based on that character and some of the villains that Dark Specter faces, or some of the villains he works with in the Dark Specter 3 shorts that will never be filmed. So I have a bunch of stories and I have effectively a Dark Specter universe that I could grow out there depending on interest and success. But it's how do you start something like that? Right. I'm still trying to figure that part out.
All right, Bruce, before we let you go, where can we find more of you and more of Dark Specter?
Oh my God. So first off, you can find me on YouTube. If you just look for Bruce Nachsin, Nachsin, you can see it down there on the corner. You will find my YouTube. And at my YouTube, you can find the 2 Dark Specter shorts, as well as all the other shorts that I've made, and my 2 podcasts. One is called The Fittest Fat Kid You Know, because I am. Most people who, like right now I weigh about 250, 260, and I'm doing flips, I'm doing falls, I'm doing, like this is, like I'm working on my martial arts. This is what I do. Then there's also my other podcast called Fails, Falls, and F-Ups, which is the polite phrasing of that title. And that's where I interview successful people about all the times they were amazingly unsuccessful and the lessons you can take from that. Otherwise, just look for Bruce Nachsin on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, though I'm inconsistent on social media posting. And you can always email me at brucenachsin.com.
Bruce, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You look great. You're very talented. I wish you nothing but success. God bless you. Thank you.
Stop flirting with me. Naughty boy. Thank you so much for having me on. I very much appreciate it.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. This episode was written and produced by yours truly, Carlos Correa. My theme by Sken, Galis. Remember, you can visit my website, carlostonight.com, for the very latest on the podcast, see upcoming guests, check out past episodes, and leave me a note. See you next time.
Dale que viene lo bueno.